Happening. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're going to get started this evening. I'm Reverend Erica Kozer. I'm one of the pastors here at Centenary United Methodist, and I would just like to welcome you here tonight. We are thrilled with the turnout and hope that it is a fruitful evening for this wonderful discussion.
All right. I am Colette Brody-Grund. I'm one of the pastors at Bethlehem Lutheran, just down the street. And I have the honor of introducing our panelists and sort of helping to make sure things run smoothly tonight. So I also wanted to thank Centenary, especially for opening up their space. And I think there's going to be some refreshments afterwards.
There may be homemade chocolate chip cookies,
or make sure we thank those kitchen ladies, definitely. And to thank the Connections Ministry Board. If you are a board member and you're here, will you just wave a hand? There's a few. There's a couple more out in the hallway. So any of those people could also answer questions, and we'll try to highlight them again as the evening goes. I hope that you all got paperwork when you came in. There are 2 flyers and a brochure. There are plenty out there, so please take more if you know of people who couldn't be here tonight that are interested. And make sure that you have signed in so that we can pass along more information as it becomes available. All right, so over here we have Brad Potter. He's from Belgrade Avenue Methodist Church, and he's going to tell you about the work that they did last winter with sheltering people. And then on the other end, we've got Deb Newman, who is right now with Partners for Affordable Housing for a few more days. And she is here to kind of talk to us about homelessness in our community in general. We're glad to get you on the last little bit of your tenure with Partners. So, and many of you know that she'll be going to the Children's Museum soon, and Partners is looking for a new executive director. So I think we're going to start with Deb.
We want to sit?
Yeah, I think we should sit. It's awkward.
That's
It's
why
just stand up here, right?
I'll take that off for now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good evening, and thank you for being here. About a year ago, we connected with the Connections Ministry group, really talking about the homeless plight that we're seeing here in the Mankato area. And for those of you who are not familiar with Partners for Affordable Housing, we have been in the community since the mid-'80s. We started out with the Welcome In, and then we also had the Teresa House join us. There's really three arms to what we do at Partners. First is our emergency shelters, which we can house up to 11 families within the two houses on South Broad Street. We primarily serve single women and families can be couples. They can be mom and dad with kids, mom with kids, dad with kids, and they can stay up to 90 days at our shelter. We do case management services while people are there, working with our licensed social worker and our shelter manager and case aide, really helping to try and house those families back into our community. Additionally, we offer transitional housing support up to 24 months for families who have found themselves in a homeless situation. So we'll provide case management services for those families for up to 24 months, and that is, again, working with a different licensed social worker in our transitional housing or welcome home program. And we'll provide rental assistance, daycare assistance. It may be that there's some transportation needs that the family has, but definitely rental assistance for up to 24 months. And then lastly, we also have 5 apartment complexes out in the community, a total of 29 apartments, as well as 3 homes that we offer to low-income families at below market rates here in the community. So all in all, Partners for Affordable Housing is touching about 200 individuals within our community each day. And one of the things that we see quite frequently is we get calls every day of people needing some emergency shelter. And these are families, these are often people who are working in our community. And for those of you who aren't familiar, there's been a number of studies that have been done. Harvard University facilitated a study, as well as the Minnesota Housing Partnership came out with a study that says Mankato, North Mankato, has one of the lowest inventories of affordable housing in our state. We just simply have rental property that is too high for the incomes that are being paid within our region. And based on that, what we see is roughly housing costs. If you look at income, a family for a 2-bedroom modest apartment or home would spend roughly, let's just say $640 is what they could afford. But what we see is often that those 2-bedroom apartments are more like $800 a month in our community. And so what happens is oftentimes families will take an apartment and then something happens, whether it's their car breaks down, maybe they lose their job or their hours are cut, maybe there's health issues that occur, and those families end up finding themselves in a spiraling situation that eventually leads to their eviction. And so that's the type of calls that we get. In the last year, we had just under 1,000 individuals reach out to Partners needing some type of emergency shelter. And those are people who meet our criteria. And that criteria is that, again, they're single women or their families, and they're here in our area. We get lots of calls also from people outside of our region, from the Twin Cities, from Des Moines, Illinois, Missouri. We redirect those people back to their resources in their area. But for those that are in our area, what we're seeing, sorry, I'm grabbing my numbers here for you. We see that roughly about 47% of the people who contact us in the last year found themselves couch hopping. And couch hopping is where you are staying with a family member or a friend or even potentially a stranger. And those can be very serious issues. Sometimes there's safety issues that occur. One time we had a family, a woman call. She left a voice message on my work phone. And she said at 4 in the morning, she had to leave where she was staying with her 14-year-old and her 12-year-old because it was just too unsafe. And so at 4 in the morning, she left, at 6 o'clock in the morning, she was calling us trying to find emergency shelter for her and her children. So finding that people are couch hopping is not really an ideal situation because you're often at the whim of the person you're staying with. It could be a quid pro quo type of situation where if you let me stay there, if I let you stay there, you have to have sex with me. If I let you stay there, you have to pay me $200, and then guess what? Maybe I kick you out immediately. So the couch hopping piece is really not a safe situation. Of the 47% that were couch hopping, 1% of those individuals were actually couch hopping with a stranger. Because we asked people when they call, where did you stay last night? And so 1% was staying with a stranger. Just to give you other perspective, I'm gonna grab my glasses. That's what happens when you get old. 14% of those that called us actually were staying in their car. Another 7% were living out in the elements. And that can be, again, a really dangerous situation when you're out and about here in the city. And it maybe is tenting that you're staying somewhere out in the woods. We had a family that reached out to us, and thankfully we were eventually able to house the family. But the mom had 3 children, and one of the children happened to come through when we were looking at one of our apartments. And she said to our property manager, she started crying, and she said, "Can this be my home?" And this is an 8-year-old who is having to worry about where she's staying. And the next day they came in to sign their lease with us, and the little girl, I met her out in the hall, and she was so excited because she got finally permanent housing. And she says, "Do you know how scary it is to live out where we were living with the snakes and the wild cats?" And I thought, wow, thankfully we were able to house this family, but an 8-year-old shouldn't have to worry about that. And so for us at Partners, we see a lot of people who have just found themselves in a situation where they just can't find affordable housing in our community. And just to give you some additional statistics, District 77 had identified 300 students that are homeless or highly mobile in our community. 300. So I don't know about you and your class size from your graduating community, but that's 3 times my graduating class. That's an entire senior class here in either Mankato East or West High School that is homeless or highly mobile, meaning they don't have a place to stay every single night and may have to be on the move. When you look at our Section 8, and we've got a couple people here that could probably speak to this as well. So Section 8 is where you can sign up to get rental support from the county, and that opened up here for the first time in 2 years on April 18th. By April 26th, 570 households had reached out to apply for Section 8 housing. And if you look at statistics, it can take a long time for those people to actually get the Section 8 voucher and then be able to find a place here in our community where they can use that voucher. So it's, when you look at 570 households, that's pretty amazing. We also had Project Community Connect, which MVAC, the county, Partners for Affordable Housing, and Kate, how many agencies in total were there?
There were about 70 agencies present.
And we ended up having a record number this year?
Yes.
With like 687 visitors?
Yes. Sounds right.
There I have it right here. It took me a while to get to it. Thanks, Kate, for helping me. So Project Community Connect is really about getting a series of resources available for those in need in our community, in our region. And it was in its 7th year this year, if I'm not mistaken. And it was here in April, and with roughly 70 agencies, over almost 700 people showed up that afternoon to receive some type of housing, not necessarily housing, sorry, I'm on housing, some type of support within our community. So it's a great resource. So again, if you look at the numbers we're seeing in the community, for 2 years in a row, we have had the 1,000 mark where people have reached out to Partners. And some of my colleagues here in the community have said, yeah, Deb, but guess what? Those are people who know about you. There are people who don't know about you, who haven't called you, and there are also people who won't call you because they know you're full all the time. And so when you look at the Connections Ministry, Partners for Affordable Housing is still in search of a larger shelter for our community. We know that that doesn't solve the issue of affordable housing, but we want to make sure people are getting that emergency shelter to get back on their feet and hopefully find themselves in a better place. And so for us, as we engage in this discussion, the community needs a cold weather shelter, needs emergency shelter in the winter for these families. And we're thankful that you all are taking on this task and partnering with us and continuing dialogue as well. And who do I turn it over to now? Colette.
Erica, you're next.
I'm next. All right.
Oh, you got it.
I got one. So I'm a pastor here at Centenary, and Centenary for the last 4 years has been serving a breakfast every morning, 6 days a week. Sundays, it's a little lighter fare. But we have opened our doors and welcomed anyone in the community that might want to come in for a breakfast. And we have seen that steadily grow over the last 4 years. What started out as 5 people coming to just have a cup of coffee, and at that point we were doing the Sam's Club muffins that come in the plastic cellophane, you know, highly nutritious breakfast, but started at 5 people kind of coming in and coming out of the cold and being in community. And we are now serving close to 80 to 100 people a day. Not all of those people that we serve are homeless. Many of them have experienced homelessness. Many of them will kind of ebb and flow in and out of homeless situations. But what makes Holy Grounds, I think, extra important and special is that we see a lot of the same people day in and day out. And we've built relationships with people over the course of the last 4 years. And housing is a huge issue. And we have some wonderful alternatives in the community, but we just don't have enough beds that meet and fill all the gaps. And so as we have worked with people, as we have heard stories, as we have listened to where people had slept the night before, many mornings showing up here at the church and finding people who have made a bed on our front bench or have curled up next to our door because it's a pretty safe place. That begins to take its toll on you after a while, and you realize that this community has an issue that we need to address. And the people that we address now are my friends. They're the people that I see and have breakfast with every single day, and we share coffee together. And so knowing as we approach winter, I know not yet, we're just approaching summer, but as we begin to move and look ahead to winter, I don't want to have to look at any of these people and say, Mankato doesn't have a place to shelter you because you don't fit with this program, or this program's full, or there isn't a bed in this program. We want to be able to offer that to anybody that needs it, because it's too cold to have to sleep outside, to have to sleep on a bench, to have to find a place to tuck yourself away so that you're safe, or, as you were saying, to do things that you would never normally do just to have a safe place to sleep. And as we've continued to work with people, and as I've gotten to know people, what is so crucial is a good night's sleep. And if you think about your own lives, how well do you do if you've had a bad night's sleep? If you've been up with a sick child, or you have had a restless night, the next day you're groggy. Imagine that day after day after day after day after day, and that's your existence. You can't focus on finding a job. You can't focus on recovering from addiction. You can't focus on getting help for your mental health issues because you are in survival mode. And so providing shelter, providing a place where people know I can be safe tonight, I can be warm. It's maybe not an ideal situation, but it's safe and it's warm. Gives them a night of sleep, gives them a place to start the next day because they're not in survival mode as much. And we're able to then soldier the resources that are abundant in this community and help people really move forward. So as Centenary, and Colette and I think this all began over a cup of coffee about 2 years ago, saying, we need to do something. We really need to look at this. And it has continued to grow and to morph. But as we continue to work with the population that's relatively hidden here in Mankato, we find that the need for the shelter is huge and crucial to many people.
So we had the coffee.
We had the coffee.
We started a conversation, and there were other pastors around the table having that conversation as well. And basically all of this started out of seeing what you all were doing here with Holy Grounds, seeing the people that come into all of the downtown church buildings, asking for assistance with various things, and feeling as clergy that we weren't helping, that we couldn't do enough to really make a difference for people, that we were able to hand out a $20 gift card or pay part of somebody's electrical bill or haggle with a landlord to say, if we give you $100 today, can they stay one more week? And that's really frustrating after a while to feel like you're just putting a Band-Aid and then you see the same wounds again and again. And so we started to say, what if we all did this together? And that is the birth of Connections Ministry, which is the partnership of downtown churches. And there are 6 churches that are part of that right now. There are more that I'm talking to like every day right now, and more people wanting to figure out how to help as well. And so we have already pooled the financial resources that we were using to help people and are able to do a little bit bigger help, hopefully making a longer term difference. Connections Ministry has also trained some volunteers to be here at Holy Grounds and help people navigate the resources that are available. There's a lot going on in our community, but it's overwhelming for somebody to get all the brochures from the different agencies, and it would take days to get around to all of those. So we've collected all that information and have volunteers to walk through that with people. We still get all the time to the end of all of that information and people say, I'm still not going to make it. I'm still not going to be able to pay my bills. I still can't come up with the deposit to get housing. It's just too much. And we're able sometimes to help with that. But the more that we have worked with people and talked together, the more we became convinced that it needed to be more than financial help, more than resource guidance. And shelter was the thing that kept coming up. So about this time last year, we started to talk about the shelter. And there were lots of ideas about how to do it and when to do it. And when we got to the fall, we said, as Connections Ministry, we don't have it together. We can't get it together this fall. And this was the same time that the Salvation Army was not sure that they were going to be able to open on time. And so there was all of this panic of people saying, where's the shelter going to be? Well, Connections Ministry decided that at that point, we would be better off to develop a long-term plan. And thankfully, Brad said, you know what? I think my church could do something. And so they did. And I'm going to let him tell you what they did.
Am I on?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Brad Potter, Belgrade Avenue United Methodist Church. Quick quiz. I need to do a marketing quiz since I have my minister in the audience here. Who knows where Belgrade Avenue Church is? Raise your hands.
Hey, look at that.
Oh.
Who doesn't know? All right, amen.
Woo. Well done.
I thought our name was self-description, but maybe sometimes it's not. So, but that was one of the things that I had as an experience. But no, Colette was very kind, and we kind of launched our program in November. We went from November about to mid-April with our shelter. I think we said we were going to end April 1, and then we had a family that was coming in, and it was better just to close up mid-April. We didn't want to have a hard and fast saying, hey, look, it's April 1, we're done, we're moving on. So we had a very simple model, a very understanding congregation. We didn't build any facilities, obviously. We just held it in our sanctuary, in our fellowship hall below the sanctuary. If any of you are familiar with Belgrade Avenue Church, it was in the fellowship hall. And we anticipated how many cots do we get? What's this going to look like? And I think I had some great partners that came alongside me, like Jamie here at Centenary came alongside me, was sitting there with me the first week to see who was going to show up or who was not going to show up. So we didn't know. We had like 25 cots donated. We want to, of course, use them for another shelter that may happen. But I think it was a very simple model. What I didn't want to get bogged down into was the worst case scenario. I hear it all the time. Well, we all hear it all the time. That space aliens are going to come and they're going to vaporize the earth and the world will end tomorrow. And no, that's not going to happen. I think the people that did use the shelter were at times very timid, at times very emotionally a wreck. And I don't blame them from their situation that when they walked in the door with them and their kids. It was tough. And I think so we strategically kept a very simple intake process of one page. We just want your name. We want your number. If you want to give us additional information, let us know. But we kept it very, very simple. We did talk to the city of North Mankato because that's where we're at, what we're doing. They were very gracious, very kind, and knew we were there. But I think it was a very simple intake process, and then it was pretty much kind of sitting, listening to them. I think that's the big thing. Some of these people just want to be listened to because they come in and you just almost have to sit down and have a discussion with them for probably 20 minutes or half an hour. And that may not seem like enough time, it may seem like too much time, but I think it's crucial to kind of see where they're coming from, see what situation they're coming out of. Because some are women coming out of abusive relationships, and they are very reluctant, because I'm a guy. That's a part of it. I think it is, because I think there's a trust level there though too, is that I'm a stranger, and I think people were reluctant to go to a place to have shelter. But I think once you start breaking down those barriers and just having a conversation with people, you kind of get to know them better. And it was kind of, well, I should say neat for me, but overnight after night, you start to build trust with these people. You start to hear more of their backstory. You try to help them out with that. We average probably 4 to 7 people per night was kind of our average. So it wasn't like our walls were bursting with people, but I think it was a good need for the community. I got to know a lot of people during the process. I'll certainly talk about that. I scratched down a whole bunch of notes as the other folks were talking. But again, a very simple intake process. We did start hiring one overnight person to be there. That became economically insufficient, or economically just didn't work. So we went on the honor system. We tried the honor system. There was nights that the church was very, I'll probably get kicked out of the church now with Dan here, but we went on the honor system. We would close up, and I think we went on the honor system when we knew the family well. And it was kind of neat because the people that were there longer term knew this was a place that they could be safe, and they weren't going to let people mess this up. So if there's other people, they almost became like an adaptive steward of the shelter. They kind of knew that this was a warm place, a good place. And there was a volunteer there, great woman, who kind of was like a mother hen in a good way. And she would kind of welcome people in. And after a while, ironically, because she was through this system so much, she started a brochure table. She started all this stuff. And she probably knew more than some of the caseworkers in the field, because she was through the process, which was great. But she did some of those things, and eventually she kind of became a volunteer of ours to help out, because she knew the resources so much. So there were nights we closed the doors, we locked the doors from the outside, told people you can't go out for everyone's safety. We don't want you going out. Once you're out for the night. I think Deb referred to earlier, I think there was some logistics. We used to get some calls, really wasn't an issue, but somebody would say, hey, look, I have a job at manufacturing job till midnight. I get off at work. Can you open the door for me at 1 a.m.? And you're like, So you kind of wing it, and you say, okay, if you can call this number, and then we can let the person know they're that for the night, and then they can let you in, but you need to call ahead. So I would advise it in looking forward to the shelter, no matter how much you plan, there will be things that will happen, and you just have to roll with the punches and just let it happen. Things will happen, and you just learn from those lessons and move on. I think these people are very thankful for what you're doing. We really didn't have any bad behavior. We had a couple little things, but it wasn't anything big. I think we had some towels that were gone, but that's not a big deal. To me, that's not a big deal. Going through this process, I joke that I probably got a junior college level social work degree over the past winter, going through some of this. But I think it was frustrating for us is that the church was kind enough to allow a daytime shelter, and yet we would have to tell people, okay, it's 8 a.m., 9 a.m., which is our soft deadline for you to leave. You need to leave. When it's 21 below out, did I break that? Yes. Sorry, Dan. When it's that cold out, I really can't tell someone to go back out on the street. When it's that very cold. And that was the problem that I had, is that we were a good overnight stay, but in the daytime, that was an issue. And I think us as a community, we need to do something with that. The day center, I think that's been talked about. I think that'd be awesome, because there's so many things that can be done with a day center. Is that, you talk to the people, you talk to them about relocating to the area, and then you start talking about jobs, and you start getting into past driver's license records. Not so good. They can't drive, they can't get a license, or maybe they had some minor criminal element, even if it was a DWI. It's amazing how people get blacklisted from employment. They can't do anything. So if we want these people to go out and be part of a productive society, which I think we all want, right? We want them to succeed. They have these strikes in the past, and we want to move on, and we just can't get there. So between that, they just can't find a job. That too, and I always thought at our shelter that Friday nights were the worst. Not because it was a Friday night and I was at church. I didn't mind that. It was Friday nights are the worst, especially with like a Martin Luther King holiday and a Monday, because they will not have services for Saturday. They had Holy Grounds, which was a godsend, but they won't have the ability to go to public offices or government offices that are open on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. I think bus services may change too. So there's all these dynamics. While I, like you, enjoy the weekends, yes, it's downtime. It is a horrible time for this population, because then the services cease to exist. And while our life goes on and good during the weekend, their life gets complicated. So I saw that a bunch of times during the weekends. It gets very hard on them too. But I think, probably overall from this, it was a good experience. I met a lot of good people, interesting people. Yeah. And it's pretty much, I would say, moving forward, daytime, we got to figure that out. This is a good step of trying to get this ministry going for overnights, but daytime center, we need something to come alongside these people. And then I would also too encourage that we need to have like a volunteer caseworker, and I know the county has their systems, and I know a lot of systems government wise, and I work in government, so I can say this, a lot of systems don't always work. You're handcuffed by rules. You're handcuffed by things you can and cannot do with laws, and that's fine. But, with Kate from MVAC, who's in the office, I love going to Kate's HRT meetings, because I'm just a guy, and I don't have to abide by, I should say, I'm just a guy not representing an organization or a entity. I'm just a guy. So doing that, I can do things that maybe they can't do that seem probably very simple to you too. But I would say we need to find caseworkers to come alongside these couples or families, because that's what they need. They need a caseworker to help them find employment. They need a caseworker to keep them accountable. They need a caseworker to encourage them. I know the county only has so many resources, but I think even a volunteer couple saying, okay, look, I'm going to not give them everything that they need, but try to encourage them and try to put them in a better place. It would help, and I think it would save a lot of money. I think it would blow people's minds if they knew how much we spend on hotel rooms for some people. And I can say briefly that we tried to help out with hotel rooms, and it's a good gap for overnight housing, but I think it would probably blow your mind how much we as a society spend on hotel rooms right now trying to meet this demand that we're talking about tonight. And, that's got to change. So that's kind of my story. I think it worked probably well as it could, but I think if we could reach more people, and I think that's what's so great about Connections is it's probably honestly a better geographical location for people. And it's good that the churches down in this area are so closely located together. And I still think we would be involved, but I think it's great that the work that they're doing.
I would just add, Brad used the acronym HRT.
Oh.
That is the homelessness response team of Blue Earth County, and there are a number of representatives here. If you are a part of that, raise your hand. So that is a group that gets together on a monthly basis and talks about the issues facing our community. So
Yep.
I just wanted to add what HRT was.
Thank you. That's helpful. All right. Yes. So we have been talking to people and slowly piecing together the plan that you got when you came in, hopefully that's on the table. And I'm going to run you quickly through that. I'm not going to run through a lot of details because they are all written down and we want to get to questions sooner rather than later. So basically the idea is we are going to open up our churches for shelter. We are hopeful to have 6 congregations. There are 4 that have made commitments so far, so we're close. If we get more than 6, even better. And each congregation will commit to sheltering a week at a time. So from a Sunday night to a Sunday morning, their building will be open each night of the week for up to 25 guests. And they will decide within their own building what is going to be the best space to use. We are hoping to be able to provide some separation for families so that people with kids can have a little bit of privacy, but it will depend on each church and the space that they're able to use. We are going to do a central check-in each night, so it will always be that you come to Centenary if you need shelter about 7 p.m. and sign in. And we are following Brad's recommendation to keep that sign-in as simple as possible. We're not requiring really any information other than a name and a contact information. So they'll check in here. We are going to be working with Vine Faith in Action to help us with transportation. Obviously, if Bethlehem is the shelter site, that's close enough that people can walk. If it's Belgrade, probably some people will need transportation. So we'll be talking to Vine about helping out with that piece of it. So people will get transported or walk to the shelter site, which will open at 7:30 p.m. Volunteers from the congregation will be there to welcome people and provide a snack and make sure everybody gets settled in. It may not be too much settling in after that first night of the week. We're hopeful that people will come and stay as long as they need to stay. We're not going to try to time limit people's stay. So they can come, get settled in, find their cot space, have a snack, and by 10 p.m. we will have lights out and quiet time. And then the next morning, another set of volunteers will come in to sort of do the cleanup and roundup and get people out of the building around 7:30 a.m. Again, with transportation in the morning to get people back here to Centenary so that they can have breakfast or go from here to wherever they're going to go for the day. We have policies in place, but we are trying to stay away from too many rules. Basically, our philosophy is if you need a place to stay, you're not harming yourself or anyone else, then you're welcome to stay. So hopefully, and we've seen it, Brad, you talked about this, and I know Erica, you've talked about this at Holy Grounds. If the community values this service, it will self-regulate. And there may be a few incidences. We have done a lot of research of other people that are doing this work in the cities, in Rochester, in Chicago and Nashville. We've talked to a bunch of people all over the place. And everyone that I've talked to has said to me, on average, in this shelter, we run into one major incident a year. And the rest of the time, everything runs like it's supposed to run. So that, I think, can set our minds at ease as we open up our building. People really just want a place to stay. They're not looking for anything else. Nobody is looking to cause trouble. And so I hope, even though it still feels risky, I think for a lot of our congregations to do this work, the risk is really minimal. And I think that the benefits that we get as congregations from hosting are really powerful, both for our faith lives and for the community. I think that's been one of my best pieces of ministry for the last couple of years, is being here at Holy Grounds and getting to know people different than myself, getting to hear stories of people who have overcome some amazing obstacles. Some people that you think, how did you even survive? And yet there they are, most of the time with a smile on their face at 8 o'clock in the morning, ready to greet, ready to help, ready to go about another day, even in a situation that is terrible. So the people that we will serve are inspirational. And so I think this isn't just a service that we do for the community. It is that. It's a huge need. But what we will get as members of the congregations hosting is just as much, if not more, than what we're giving. I think I'm just going to go ahead and open it up to questions then. So if you have specific questions about the plan or about anything homelessness related, you can certainly come to a mic.
Come to a mic so that everybody can
and
hear
ask
you.
your questions.
Come to a mic.
You want to hop up to the
Hop to
mic,
the mic.
Audrey?
Do you want to hop up to the microphone?
We want everybody
Sorry,
to be
but
able
we want
to
to be able to
hear
hear
you.
the question.
Okay, how do you plan on getting this stuff from one church to the other?
So we
And
will
that-
have, so we will have a system in place. We will have some overnight staff that will be hired by Connections, and they will see to getting that moved on Sunday.
And
from
then are
one church
you
to
working
the
on
next.
something for the daytime?
At this point, daytime is not, other than Holy Grounds, which when it was really cold last year, both Bethlehem and Centenary opened up for full days. But at this point, one step at a time. So we're gonna get night taken care of, and then maybe next year this time we can talk about day.
Okay.
I will say though, this is, there are always more things that we could be doing.
Always.
So if the organization that you are part of, or if you yourself are really passionate about the day shelter piece, go, make it happen,
Do
right?
it.
The day shelter piece is really simple. You really just have to open doors and let people be there. It's not hard. So if there are congregations who, for one reason or another, don't think that they can be part of the overnight piece, and you want to jump out and say, we'll do something about day shelter, even if it would just be when it's below 0.
Or Saturdays.
Or Saturdays or holidays. Any of those things, all of it helps. And everybody sort of has their piece that they can grab onto. So if that's your piece, grab onto it and let us know, and we will do what we can to support that.
I'm wondering if you've ever had any issues with pets. I have had people stay with me and they have pets.
Yes. This was something that wasn't in our policy until I talked to Brad. And Brad said, hey, people will show up with their animals, so be prepared for that. So right now, our policy, just for the sake of preserving our church's church custodian sanity, we have said
Important thing.
no pets. We have an outdoor dog kennel at my house that is most of the time empty. So if somebody brings their dog, and dogs are family to a lot of people, then we will try our best to find a place for
Find a
people's
place.
pets. It will not probably be at the church where the people are sleeping, but we will try to take care of people's pets as well.
Have you considered speaking with benches?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's on the list of things.
On the
Because
list.
I bet they would,
Yeah,
Do
they-
that.
maybe they
Yeah.
can do emergency pet shelter.
yeah, something like
I mean, they already
It's
do
really,
that, right?
it's really a
Yeah.
need though.
Yeah, no,
That's a good
absolutely,
point.
absolutely.
What's your budget?
Good question.
That's a good
So
question.
yes, the money piece of this. So there is, for the actual sheltering part of it, the churches will not have any costs because we've already got cots and
Blankets and pillows.
all of the stuff that we need for the daily sheltering. So the cost is for staff, because we have agreed, and all of the churches said, we are much more likely to be part of this if we know that there's gonna be a trained staff person on that overnight shift, the 10 PM to 6 AM shift. So we have committed as Connections to raising the money to have a staff person on site every night from 10 to 6. So the budget for that, we're thinking 3 staff people, so there'll be 1 lead staff person that would do 2 nights and sort of coordinate the shelter, hopefully taking some of this off of
Us.
our plate in the fall, and then 2 other overnight staff that would alternate the other nights, since we're going 7 nights a week from October to April. So that budget comes out to around $60,000, which is a chunk of money, but it is also totally raisable. Again, if financial donations are one of the things that you can grab onto,
We will
come and talk
accept.
to us. So there are some foundations that we'll be looking at. There are some local businesses. We have lots of ideas about where that money might come from. We have heard that the city has some interest in talking to us about that piece of it as well. So $60,000 is what we need to raise by October.
Talking about money, do churches need a different type of insurance when they have those people staying there for liability or anything that way, or?
No, the research that we have done, and we've talked to Brotherhood Mutual and Church Mutual, several of the main companies that insure churches, and no, it is not considered anything that you would need extra liability coverage for. Because it is the shorter.
I would second that we talked to our insurance agent too, and he was fine with what we were doing.
I think every congregation needs to have that conversation,
For sure.
but all of the companies that we talked to said we have congregations that are doing this work, and for the most part, it's covered under the liability that you already have.
Good question.
Then would the churches be responsible for the other various and sundry things that, like, if you're gonna wash the clothes or the blankets, and who would who does that? And volunteers take the stuff home and wash it and bring it back?
So
Or,
at the,
You know, there's lots of things that people need like throughout the night, various toothpaste, stuff like that. Who provides that?
So Holy Grounds at this point has a care closet, and knowing that Central Check-in will be here, we will be able to provide a bag that has toothbrush, toothpaste. We have showers on site here that get used every day, so we can take care of that. Churches don't need to worry about that piece of it. The only thing that we're asking churches to launder is the blankets. So at the end of the time, or if there's a turnover and who's there, that they just probably head to the laundromat because it'll be bulky, and wash the blankets. And we'll have enough to be in rotation. But otherwise, no, really anything extra. Now there could be as someone who works with youth, if you're hosting it for a week and the youth in your church want to do something special or find out what the needs are and be able to get involved that way, there are some great opportunities for that. But as far as basic needs that you need to provide, it is simply space.
And a snack.
And snack, yes. Space and snack.
Seems like this population is going to be hungry.
Yes. Yes, so that's another missing piece, the food piece. She said, it seems like this population will be hungry. So breakfast happens here, lunch happens at the Salvation Army. On Wednesday night during this period, there are lots of churches that serve meals that are free. But the other nights of the week, there aren't dinners. So we did talk about whether we could include a meal. And all of the people that we talked to that included a meal said, that's like doubling your work. And we thought, we want the shelter to get off the ground this year. And so the meal piece can't happen. That's something that is a need for sure in the community, dinners most nights of the week. So again, if that is something that your congregation would be passionate about, or you yourself would be passionate about organizing, those are conversations that we definitely want to have.
Have you thought about reaching out to other organizations, to provide an evening meal? When I was down in Sioux Falls, they have a place down there they call the Banquet. They've got groups from all over, even from western Minnesota, that come down there for meals, 7 nights a week. And, I don't know how that got off the ground, but I know it started small, but it grew into a monster.
Yeah.
You may want to, I know you're not going to do it this year, but you may want to think of reaching out to other organizations, that would step up that plate.
Right, absolutely. The thing that we have become convinced of over the last year as we've been exploring this is that people are passionate about helping in Mankato. And for every need, there is a resource.
Solution and a resource.
We just need to help people get together. So
As many
certainly,
connections as we can make
Yeah,
and ways that
those-
we can facilitate.
somebody out there can do meals.
Mhm.
It's not Connections Ministry right this second.
It's not holy grounds at this time, but we got one meal covered.
Somebody who is passionate about that can work with us to get it started for sure.
Could you describe the volunteer staffing, what it's going to look like at each location? There's going to be a this and a this
Yep.
and a this. And
Yep.
what kind of numbers are you looking for
Okay.
to be available morning?
Yep. And
evening?
evening. So ideally, there's a crew that comes in to set things up. So they're there to make sure that the space is ready, the cots are set up, the blankets are ready to go. That could be 2 to 3 people, probably not going to be more than that. Your snack providers don't have to be there. They can drop the snack off earlier or whenever, but a couple people to provide that snack. And then we're asking churches to have at least one person that's familiar with their building to be there overnight. Just for those, we're out of paper towels or, a smoke alarm is going off or, whatever might be happening. So somebody that knows that building and can be there with the staff person from Connections. And then that morning team of a couple people to come in and do the cleanup and prep it then for whatever's happening in the church during the day and get the shelter ready for that. So the actual number of volunteers, you can expand it if you want to do something more with the group that's there that night. You can have more volunteers. If you need small congregation and you have just a few people, you can really make it go with just a few.
So the total volunteers for a week would be about 30. 30 volunteers to make this happen for a week. And if somebody is going to volunteer more than one night, then obviously that brings the number
Breaks it
down. We also expect that there will be a number of congregations who are interested in helping with volunteer time that can't host for one reason or another in their building. So if you are a congregation that could host, but you're worried about providing volunteers, then we can match that up.
We've already had conversations with MSU and several student organizations there that want to get involved with volunteering. So finding volunteers for a congregation, if you don't have them within your walls, is not going to be difficult. I think we can resource you pretty well.
Say 30 volunteers, how many per night?
Per night,
So it would be about five
5 a night
per night.
in different shifts.
Hi, did you speak specifically about the other church or the other place where you're gonna be rotating at? Because it's you 3 churches. And then what was
Grace Lutheran
Grace
is the
Lutheran?
fourth one that is.
And did you talk about, in specific, like you're looking for 2 more? So what's the connections upon where else are you outsourcing here for the area for Mankato, North Mankato? And along with that, I'm just curious what the dialogue is between how you feel with the other churches and how's it going, or I'm just curious about that.
I think in the last 2 weeks, I have talked to 5 congregations that are trying to figure out how they will be involved. And Erica, I think you've.
Yep, I fielded at least that many phone calls of people calling that are interested in getting more information. How can they support this ministry and this vision, whether it's through financial support, volunteer support. We've had people, I had someone call and say, well, I can get you food. So food support. So yeah, and I think, in general, the more churches that we get involved in this and the programs that we've observed in other communities, the more congregations that are involved, the better it goes, because it impacts more and more people in the community. More people become aware of the issues of homelessness. More people are starting those relationships and understanding what the needs are, and it just kind of snowballs that change. So we are happy and hoping that we can really expand it to as many churches as want to get involved in the programming, and we will facilitate that as best as possible. I think the other thing that we didn't mention is that we will be training all of those churches. So when we get to August and we know who our churches are going to be, we will ask that each church have a volunteer contact person, and that person will attend training. We're hoping to pull some from partners, some of the training that they do with their people, just some boundaries, best practices, things like that, so that we really equip you in the best possible way for a good situation.
And I think you may have been looking for names of churches. I don't want to put out the names of the churches that we've talked to who haven't made commitments yet. So
Don't want to
I'm not going to call anybody
out.
out. But we sort of have started with the churches that are in close proximity here downtown and have been kind of slowly working our way outward. I don't think that I have talked to one church in Upper North. But we haven't branched out of sort of this valley area too much yet. But again, the more congregations, the more organizations that are involved, the greater impact that we can have and start to add things to this rotating shelter model, the day stuff, the meals. More people power means more services offered.
They got you, Victoria.
Okay, so my question was, is there any planned events for fundraising? Because it's very costly to have the shelter. So what can we do within our congregations? What can we do to help promote this? Because when I was at church on Sunday, half my congregation was like, I have no idea what that is. So what can we do besides drawing awareness in regards to fundraising? Is there something that Connections is planning on doing to help promote within the city, to help bring more awareness that we need money, we need volunteers?
Yep, so I think this is where we start tonight. We just kind of wanted to gauge what is the community input, who's on board, who's excited about it. So you are the first line of getting the word out there to start telling people what it is. We are happy to come to your congregations and talk about what is happening. We've kicked around a few fundraising ideas, but tonight was sort of the first, like, okay, we're gonna get to tonight. That is the next step.
And for sake of ease, and because we are trying to get this up and running in October, we are hopeful that we can just ask people face to face for money and not have to put together a big event. I think there's something to be said for doing publicity events so that people can come and hear more about it. But I would prefer to do those congregationally. So if your congregation is interested, maybe doing some sort of, coffee and dessert event or a breakfast event on a weekend, that we can have some conversation about it, I think is probably more effective than trying to do some
The golf tournament or something.
big deal right now.
We won't get that off.
We know that's a lot of work. We've heard that from Deb.
We didn't do a golf tournament, but.
No.
It can be.
If one were to give you money, what would be the entity that you would give it to, and it would be tax deductible?
Yes, so it would go to Connections Ministry, and that is a tax deductible. We're under the umbrella of Bethlehem Lutheran Church, so we are a 501c3. So any donations to the shelter are tax deductible.
So there's that in your church is the fiscal manager for all.
Yeah, Bethlehem is the fiscal manager for Connections Ministry. Centenary does Holy Grounds, and then Bethlehem has agreed to do Connections Ministry at this time.
I want to commend you for your hard work and your efforts, because about 15 years ago at Bethlehem, we talked about the need, and we could not make it happen because we need the cooperation of multi-churches working together. Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you. Other questions?
Have you had any conversations at all with United Way in Mankato about funding support?
Yes, we have. We've been in a lot of contact with United Way. A little bit difficult in their granting process because we have no numbers, we have no statistics. We don't have a program yet. And so I have spent a lot of time with Elizabeth Harstead talking about where we are and what we're looking at. So next year we will definitely be jumping on that. But this year we didn't have enough information to fill out the grant application.
That's also why we are under the auspices of Bethlehem Lutheran Church. We started to fill out the paperwork to become our own nonprofit and realized that we didn't know the answers to about half of those questions. So that will eventually, the fiscal sponsorship of Bethlehem is not a permanent situation. Connections Ministry will become its own nonprofit, but we need some more experience doing this work before we can fill out all those papers.
Other questions? Oh, yeah.
Isn't so much of a question, and if I'm out of line, absolutely let me know, but I just wanted to speak to when you said 30 volunteers in a week and I saw the wind come out of a lot of people, so, oh God, a bunch in the gut. Well, let me say that in the 2 years that I've been doing Holy Grounds, I have not been short of a volunteer for one day. In fact, I have 3 that I guarantee are gonna be there every single day, short of if they're on vacation. I almost never have to make a phone call for an ask, and I almost always have 5 to 6 people showing up. Either they're signed up or they're dropping in. The thing that you're gonna find is that once you start working with people in this population and it becomes more than just a number. This isn't a case, this isn't a number, this is a person with a name who had a struggle last night and they need you. It gives you a purpose to be there. And the volunteer part, it isn't, it's a non-issue. You're gonna find some people that wanna do this every night that they can, so they may go from church to church for a couple of weeks. You're gonna find some people that just need to see what it's about and find their home in it. And you're gonna see this population, again, start to regulate, and maybe somebody's there early to help throw cots up because they're gonna use it for the night and you're short on a volunteer that day. So as far as the people power goes, I don't anticipate that being any issue at all. And as far as community support goes, again, when you start knowing that you're helping people, you can't see somebody and say, well, you know, we'd love to help you, but you deserve to be outside tonight. It doesn't exist. You can't look at somebody and say, it's 30 degrees out, why don't you go find a nice bridge to sleep under. The buy-in that you're gonna get as a congregation is just the connection that you start feeling when you're working with people. It's pretty incredible. I mean, the discipleship that's created out of it is something that it's unmatched. So, again, that's just my experience in working with the population for a couple of years now. I'm working directly with a full volunteer staff. That while it seems like a big number, it's not a problem at all.
For anybody that doesn't know, this is Jamie Spade. She's the program director for Holy Grounds here at Centenary.
I have a question about the rotating shelter parts. Will they just be expected to move to a different church every single night? Or will they be allowed to stay in one spot for a week?
Yeah.
For instance?
Yeah, it rotates a week at a time.
A week at a
Yeah.
time? Now, then the next question is about bedding. Is that changed every single night? Or do they maintain it for the week they're there? With
So I
their beds
think-
on it, or-
Do you want to tell what you guys did with your bedding at Belgrade?
Great question. I think we went into it anticipating that we would wash bedding every night. That was unrealistic. So I think it came when how much that person stayed. If they stayed one night, we washed the bedding. If they stayed 3 nights, we washed the bedding. But I think it was about weekly we washed the bedding, which is great by my standards to weekly wash the bedding.
Yeah.
I don't know how long they're going to be there though.
Yeah, we don't know, so,
So I think after a week, you go, I think you tell them, come in, you know, kind of the rules, and that's just one rule that, hey, look, after a week, here's your, we kind of made sets for their cots, and here's your bedding, here's your pillow. Right at the beginning, we don't try to approach the subject because you have to realize these people are, I kind of have a rule, I call it the multiplier of 4. What I thought was going to take me 1 hour took me 4. And you have to be very, I think that's the least of their worries moving in is the bedding. And it's something that can easily be addressed within a week. And we had cots, and I saw the most creative arrangements, with families. And moms want to sleep next to toddlers. I totally get it. So is it taking cots off and having a couple more blankets and kind of creating your own nest, for lack of a better term? Great. However you're comfortable with, go for it. But I think within a week, it was what was done, and then we had spare sets of bedding, so we weren't short bedding either. So I think it worked out overall well, and it's people kind of had their arrangements that they created just to try to make their children feel comfortable in that atmosphere too.
yeah. So the basic plan would be when somebody comes, they get a cot, they get a set of bedding. When they leave, that goes into a bag with their name on it. They come back the next day, it's there, ready for them, same bedding. It gets washed at the end of the week. If they don't come back, then it just stays in the bag and everything gets washed at the end of the week. And obviously there will be times where it needs to be washed in the middle of the week or they need new bedding. So I think that's one of those pieces that we'll sort of just have to learn as we go how best to do that, but that's the basic plan.
How about nursing rooms? Are you guys planning on having like nursing rooms? Because for breastfeeding moms.
That's an excellent question.
For them to have privacy.
Yeah, so the question is about breastfeeding nursing moms, if we have a plan for that. We do not.
But we will.
But we will.
We'll make one.
So thank you for asking that question. We are gonna try, like I said earlier, to provide some sort of separation, even if it's just folding dividers for families so that they will have a little bit of privacy, and nursing is one of those things that you want privacy for.
Where and by whom will the laundry be done?
We are hopeful that each congregation will provide the volunteers to wash that bedding. It will probably need to be done at a laundromat, just because of volume, and then we're guaranteeing that it will be the same amount of clean every time. Yeah. So that's another volunteer job. And we are anticipating that the lead staff person that's hired by Connections will oversee that laundry process.
Is there any rumors whether the Salvation Army will be open this winter?
As far as we know, they will be open.
And those of us that volunteer down here on a regular basis, we like it because the people are so awesome to work with.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
It's unclear to me if I'm looking for the shelters, how I will know
how to connect with you or which church is there? What is the gateway for me when I don't have information about it?
Well, oftentimes we get calls at partners at the Teresa House and they'll welcome in. So when we're at capacity, which is every night, we're turning away far more families than we're helping. So I've got a number of my staff here tonight. That group redirects these individuals to, in Brad's case, Belgrade Methodist, the cold weather shelter. So if they're looking for space, we certainly put them on our list in the event an opening does occur, but we definitely refer them over to the cold weather shelter this past winter. So we would do the exact same. So we happen to be known as the homeless shelter in the community for families. So we get, Ani, I don't know, what, 8 calls a day, roughly, of people who are looking for some type of emergency shelter. So we would send them this team's way.
And Holy Grounds at this point gets a lot of people coming into the community. It's often the first stop that they will make as they come into the community, and Holy Grounds will have that information for the shelter.
And I think that Minnesota Valley Access Council in the county also gets a lot of phone calls from homeless folks.
Thank you.
So as long as we've got some of those main organizations on board, referring to this new shelter, and word of mouth, folks who are homeless and who are low income, they do an awful lot of networking. So I think that the word will get out there very quickly, and it'll be the people who are new to the community. And people who are new to the communities tend to go to the county, they tend to go to United Way, and they tend to go to community action. So I think we'll direct this.
And Connections is well connected with the partners in town that are already doing this work. So there's a pretty good team of us that are doing this day in and day out, and we support each other well. So that will be a good method for getting this information out.
My older brother is at Westminster Presbyterian in downtown Minneapolis, and they have a consortium of all those big churches. And they have a truck, and they move their equipment church to church, week to week. And my sister's out in South Minneapolis at Richfield Methodist, and they too are doing this program. A little different model than the one for downtown, but both of them, when I talked to them about this as I came into Connections, both of them just said it was a wonderful program, and it was something that kind of was a cohesion in their church, that people were working together because they could see that this is an at-risk population that needs shelter. They just need to be out of the cold.
Yeah, well, and we have talked about this as a not ideal situation, the rotating model. It would be much better to have a permanent shelter that was open all the time, all day, every day, to do the night shelter, the day shelter, provide all of the needs. That's not right now. And the advantage of that is what Nancy is talking about. Our congregations get to have ownership of our community problem. This is something that we all share together. And when you have connection with the people who are experiencing homelessness, it becomes us instead of them. And that really will change each of our congregations, our ability and our willingness to respond. So I think even though it's not an ideal situation, there are a lot of advantages that come from doing this rotating model. But we want you to know that this is not
ideal.
a permanent plan.
And we would hope that a building can be found, that we can, do something more permanent. But for now, this is a solution.
I think one of the things that'll also be important, and Brad hit on it, is case management services. And the homelessness response team, which is comprised of a number of different agencies that gets together on a monthly basis, it is, I think, imperative that that connection be connected to with that group, because this is the resources that are frontline in helping these people. I think having the emergency shelter is an absolute need in our community, and being able to connect with those resources like Kate at MVAC, Andrew at Blue Earth County. We have a number of the REACH, obviously you guys are well aware of, with the teens, the Salvation Army. There's just a number of resources and other resources that are needed that group can really help connect these people to. And I think we learned that with Brad's kickoff this past winter of how do we continue that relationship.
I think it'll be important as you train your volunteer coordinators for each congregation is to really encourage feedback and connections in terms of what's working, what isn't, what's innovative, what experiences they want to share with the partners in this so that we can build on that so that if mistakes are being made or some positive things are happening, we can build on that.
What we've talked about as a board is pulling together probably like a Google page that all of the volunteers at all the volunteer leaders at each of the churches can go in. There will be some questions about what worked really well for your church this week. Where did you run into trouble? Are you have enough volunteers? And what was a great story that came out of your week this week, or who was changed throughout this week, so that we do have that narrative both for funding in the future as we look forward to that, but then also just ways that we're able to troubleshoot on the fly as we go.
Will homeless youth be able to use the shelter?
Yes. Yeah, so it will be unrestricted as far as population goes. So anybody who needs shelter, regardless of how old or what gender, they'll be able to stay.
Yes.
Have you looked into how you might deal with health emergencies or developments among the guests?
Yep, we have had some discussions already with public safety about what that might look like. If we need to be in touch with public safety, they would always know which church has the shelter that week. And in our training of all of the volunteers, and especially the volunteer coordinators, there will be some protocols in place, best practices that we're pulling from other programs.
And that's one of the reasons that we want to have a paid staff person on site, so that somebody is trained to deal with emergency situations and they know who needs to be called for any given event.
One of the things that I wondered about at your feeding program, and also Brad, in your case, do you allow people to stow their possessions overnight? What do they do with their possessions?
Yes, Brad can answer this.
I'm laughing because my wife is right behind you and she's laughing hysterically. I heard my car's not in it, but no, that is a great question, because people came in and you would be welcoming, and then again, they become in that mental state, and then maybe sometimes a friend or whatever, or they got off a bus, they had a Greyhound bus stop by, and all of a sudden the suitcases keep coming and cascading. Now, I'm not trying to scare you, but 2 or 3 suitcases, and I think that's a great question about storage, is that we let people store things, and times it got a little bit intense because people were, I had one young lady that was on her way to California, and she mentally had to sort through her stuff, and we have dividers. Dan's laughing now behind because he had to deal with this too. We had dividers in our church so we could block areas off, but I think it was it was pretty organized as she saw fit, which was the best thing for her, because she did get on that bus. She did get back out to her family in California, which was a good thing for a lot of people. Sorry, she missed the bus once, but we got her on the second one the next day. We were determined. But that was, that's another story for another day. But I think that's a great question about because you got to realize, as you correctly point out, this, I don't know about you, but if I had to haul everything that I have in my life now, it would be pretty ugly. I mean, it'd be pretty ugly if all the stuff would be in my driveway and everything, is that their life is with them. And I think they have a policy kind of, Clem and Eric have talked about the policy of what you allow, and they'd have to kind of go over that. But I think that's a valid point, is that sometimes you see their life is with them. And And some of the things that they may value, you may scratch your head, and you just have to deal with that. Heck, some of the things I value, you would probably scratch your head. But I think it's a good question that we allowed it. We probably would need to be a little bit more restrictive of it, but I think it's good.
The policy information that you handed out said that they'll be able to stow their possessions under their cot.
Under their cot.
That
So,
might not be-
right, this is a situation where it will depend on each congregation. So there will be some congregations that only have multi-purpose space available. And so everything will need to be taken down every day. In which case people would not be able to store their possessions for the week. Another congregation might be able to leave stuff where it is for the whole week. And then to say, you can store your possessions for this week. And then, I mean, I think that's something that we need to tighten up a policy about that so that, because I know Brad said that there's some leftovers still hanging around.
I mean, you're going about this correctly. Don't fret about things that may not occur. Be prepared, but just take things on the fly, and that's the attitude I get of the panel here. That's the gracious attitude I get of the audience, is you gotta just take things as they come. Some things will work well, and some things you're gonna have to tweak.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it's gonna be, and I think that's a gracious attitude. If you can do this, if you can take it back to your fellow community members, your fellow parishioners, if you're comfortable with it, take them back, because all the naysayers are not here tonight, I'm sure, on this idea.
Did you find any issues of privacy? Changing, bathing, brushing your teeth? I mean.
Right.
You have this open road with, how did the privacy thing work?
I think the privacy thing worked out okay. We have, if you've been in our basement, we have partition walls that you can separate the rooms. Our probably maybe downfall was we don't have a shower as secondary, so people would kind of freshen up at the bathroom, and that was it worked okay. But I think sometimes, and I'll take the blame. Sometimes if we weren't coordinating the night group that was going out and the other group that was coming in, we had a little bit of a surprise for a group that was coming in, and that was maybe once or twice, but that was fine. But I think we were blessed to having partitions that gave people privacy to change clothes. I think that was good too.
And again, that's something that as a connections board, we're happy to come into a congregation and you can kind of say, all right, this is the space we're thinking. What suggestions do you have as to how we might make this work? And we've done enough research that I think we can help provide some of those suggestions as churches are figuring out what spaces might work for this.
I know you want to get this off the ground by October, so what's your timeline in looking at congregations saying, yes, we're going to do this, or any timeline?
Way to make us pin it down.
I think that we would really, if congregations are going to host, if you are going to open your building for people to stay overnight, we really need to know that as soon as possible. By the end of June would really be ideal. If you think the conversation is going to take longer than that at your congregation, we won't count you out. So please let us know that, and we recognize that some congregations are further along in the conversation. But by the end of June, we really need to be able to start planning, and we need to be able to say to people that we're approaching for funding, we have commitments from this many congregations. So if you are a congregation that wants to provide volunteer support or help raise some money, or provide food support, those commitments can come on board later. But I think by the end of the summer, we're really hopeful to have everybody that's going to be part of it in October. By the end of August, we know who wants to do what, and which volunteers.
Right. Because from a church planning calendar, wise, it's important for congregations to know this is the week we have the shelter, so we need to not be scheduling, an outside group that's going to perform, or, so just in helping churches plan long range, I think that's good. And then so that we can start helping you identify within your congregations who your point people are, so we can get them trained effectively. Jens?
Bringing forward a question from the back. If someone has questions about Connections Ministry that's watching on the live stream or watches a later recorded video, is there a phone number or an email they can send questions to, or an individual congregation or person that'd be willing to be the point person for questions?
They can call our Connections phone number, which is the same as Centenary's at this time, and just ask for Connections Ministry. You actually will get to the Connections voicemail box. It's 507-387-4074. And either Colette or I will get those messages, and we'll get information to you. You can also go on our Facebook page, Connections Ministry, and that you can private message us, and we will pick up those messages also.
We also have an email account that's
connectionsmin,
min@gmail.com.
Thank you for what you're doing. In my life, I was homeless for a long period of time. However, through people that administered to me and told me about the hope of the Lord Jesus Christ, and that was my basis after that. And that trust in Him got me through to where I'm at today. And I went back and I got a 4-year degree, and I worked 20 years in a nursing home. And it was something that I could give back to the Lord as much as He gave to me. So taking care of the homeless is the beginning of their spiritual journey. And I just believe that for every one of those people out there. And I do have a son that's homeless right now. He's got a mental illness. He can't be around people. He's in his van for the last 20 years. And he knows Jesus Christ. And I know if I don't see him today, I'll see him in heaven. That's my hope. And I know that that's the trust that God gave me. So I just want to thank you. And we just put it all into God's hands, and He'll lead us to what He wants for this community.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I think that's a really important piece that we also haven't said so far, that we are doing this motivated by our faith. So this ministry is a ministry. That doesn't mean that when somebody walks in the door, the first question is going to be about their faith life. But I know at Holy Grounds, there are people who are prayed with every day. There are people who want to talk about their faith or their lack of faith, the questions that they have. And the fact that it all happens in a church makes a difference. And it opens up an avenue for people to see the church in a new way. Because a lot of people have experienced the church as a hurtful and unwelcoming place. And this is a way for us to turn that around and to give people an opportunity to see the Church of Christ in a new way, and maybe have a new openness to developing a relationship with God. So that's, we're doing this so that people don't have to sleep outside. We hope that as a side benefit of all of that, and it's much more than a side benefit, but we are hopeful that people will see Christ active in us, that we will see Christ active in them, and that all of us will come to know the love of God in a much more concrete way. Anything else?
Any other questions?
We are right at our time limit.
We are. Good job. So we are around for the rest, for however long. If you have individual questions you want to ask, if I can ask one of my congregation members, there's plates of chocolate chip cookies on the counter in the kitchen if you want to put them on the table, and there's pictures of water. Thank you. You got to have people you can point at. So we will be here to answer any of your other questions. If you want to give us money, if you want to sign up your congregation, we are ready. We are ready to do that. But Again, thank you to our panel guests for being here tonight, and thank you to all of you for caring.